All right, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, stay with us for our exclusive interview with the Auditor General of the state of Pennsylvania. Could he be running for another office next year? We're going to find out. And then the credit card crunch, what does it mean to you? It's important, all of that and more following these words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back to the program, and as always, thanks for watching, and thanks for making us #1 in our time spot on WGAL and widely watched around the state. We deeply appreciate that. It's all about you, and it's all about this gentleman sitting across the desk from me. Look at him, Jack Wagner. He's the Auditor General of the state, one of the biggest vote getters in the history of the state. And now, General Wagner, what do you think I'm going to ask you? If you had a guess, what do you think I'm going to ask you? Come on now, fess up.
The question would be, what's your observation of our inspector becoming a Democrat?
Oh, well, I'm going to get to that. But before I do, I got it. Look, you're one of the biggest vote getters. You're very popular. You've made high profile on the audits. Now, I'm not buttering you up for any reason other than to ask you. You once considered or thought about running for the United States Senate. Is that a yes?
Yes, I did consider. But I made a decision in my mind a couple months ago that I was not interested in running for U.S. Senate.
Now, your career has basically been as a state senator, right?
State senator, member of Pittsburgh City Council, president of Counsel. Right. I'm a safety engineer by profession now.
But my point is, you're a state government guy.
Yes.
Not that you don't know anything, but your primary interests have always been, for most of your career, is that correct?
Yes.
Local and state government.
Yes.
Well, now where does this next question go? We got an open governor's race next year, right? In your party, the Democratic Party, you would be the only statewide officer well known in the state. Good candidates in both parties, strong candidates. Why wouldn't you just on this show say you're going to run?
Well, I have not publicly said that I'm going to run for governor. But I can assure you that once I make that decision, you will be first to know.
And you'll come on this program
yes,
and
I
talk
will.
about it.
But
will. You are seriously considering it.
I am very seriously considering it. And I have been so busy as Auditor General, I haven't given it the time I need to give it.
Right.
But yes, that is high, very high on my priority list.
Right. Boy, I'll tell you, I mean, here we are, we're still, what, a year away from the primary election, and it's like both Senate and governor's races are heating up. But you're going to have to make some decision relatively soon.
Yes, there's no doubt about it.
A couple of weeks, a couple of months?
I would say weeks, if not a month or two.
Okay.
Your observation, it's a year and a month from a primary. Obviously, you have to start early when you're running for a very important seat such as governor. I understand that. I have had many discussions with many people encouraging me to run for governor. That's part of the actual analysis and the groundwork you have to do.
Yeah, well, look, I'm not just saying, you're very popular in the state. I mean, Democrats obviously like you. You're even, popular among many Republicans. I mean, you would be a formidable opponent. Now, having said that, I think both parties have very strong fields of competent people. I mean, I am very impressed with both parties, the kind of names that get bandied about.
Good for Pennsylvania.
It's good for Pennsylvania. Good point. All right, I want to get to a couple of your activities, but before I do, within a week, last week, Senator Specter says, I'm changing parties. Did that surprise you?
Very much surprised. I had no idea. As a matter of fact, if you would have asked me the question yesterday morning, I would have said, in all probability, Senator Specter would run as an independent. But obviously, there have been discussions with the governor, with the president, with the vice president, with Senator Reed and others, and a decision was made, a bold decision to change parties.
Are you happy about this?
I haven't given it enough thought, but I do know this. Senator Specter's done a lot of good things for Pennsylvania.
He's a Democrat now. He's in your party.
Well, he is. But I like to look at the issue component of it first. and I haven't fully analyzed that, but I do know he's been a strong advocate of improved health care in a whole multitude of ways.
Right.
Our Children's Hospital, cancer institutes, et cetera, et cetera. Right. Obviously, he will be a good supporter of the president in terms of his energy program, his health care program, his educational program. All very important issues.
The big Obama initiatives to sort of change the nature of government,
yes.
these big policy changes.
And Terry, I think that's what's important to look at right now. I mean, Senator Specter has a year and a half left in his present term. And him being part of getting things done over the next year and a half, I think, is what is first and foremost vitally important.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to go to your full-time job.
Okay.
I want to ask you about the stimulus, differences in what you think ought to happen and some of the other audits that you did. Talking with the Auditor General of the state of Pennsylvania, Jack Wagner. We'll be back after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by PAConstructionJobs.com. For more information about rewarding careers in the highway construction industry, visit PAConstructionJobs.com. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back to the program. I'm talking with Jack Wagner. He's the Auditor General of the state of Pennsylvania. Probably going to run for governor, but he won't tell us. But we'll have him back when he does. All right, I'm off that kick, General Wagner. Look, I want to talk about the stimulus accountability. 18, if you can figure out exactly how much, let me know. $16 to $18 billion that will come into the state. You've written to the U.S. Government Accountability Office. You've raised some questions about whether there's effective management control. You've gotten a kind of blowback from some state officials. First of all, why did you write? What was your purpose in doing that?
Well, the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, sought to meet with us about 2 months ago. And we've had 2 meetings, and both meetings have been several hours. Them asking us a lot of questions. As a matter of fact, we filled out a questionnaire. And having a good dialogue back and forth as to what their role is in terms of checks and balances with the stimulus money, approximately $8 billion a year for 2 consecutive years. Right. And them asking us what we do. They're doing that with 16 states. It was incumbent upon us to follow up to them with a letter based on what we discussed. And in that letter to them, after these 2 meetings, after filling out their questionnaire, we simply said we have concerns. And we have concerns based on previous audits where stimulus monies are going. And we want to play and will play a very active role in terms of accountability and oversight because the President and Congress wrote that right into the stimulus legislation.
So in other words, you have a legal responsibility to audit, they'll use that word audit, to audit how that money's being spent because of the federal mandate or because of state law gives you that responsibility, or both?
Both. Absolutely both. Any federal dollars that come into state government and are then reallocated by state government, we have a direct mandate for oversight.
Now, there's been this sort of back and forth between Governor Rendell and the legislature over the oversight. You know, Senator Brubaker has a bill in the legislature that would have mandated certain oversight considerations. To be candid, it's not likely to get out of the Pennsylvania House, controlled by the governor's party, and that's understandable. On the other hand, Governor Rendell put together this committee. It has a lot of legislators on it and some, labor and business folks. That role is different than yours, is that correct?
Absolutely.
What are they doing compared to what you will do? Well,
number one, it was a good idea for the governor to create this oversight commission. He was not mandated to do that. It's even more important that he has some legislators on there because these dollars are not going through the normal process of checks and balances with the General Assembly.
Right.
I mean, allocation of state dollars has to be done by the General Assembly to permit the governor to spend them. Not the case with the stimulus money.
That's right. And that's by federal law.
That's by federal law. Yeah. So therefore, having this commission is a good idea. although, Terry, you know and I know, it's not a truly independent commission because the governor appoints the commission. All the more reason that our role becomes even more important, and the Government Accountability Office. So all we're saying is that we are going to keep a watchful eye on these dollars, just as we do with other dollars that are allocated through state government.
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of fascinating because if you look back over history, what you find whenever the government tries to spend huge sums of money in a relatively short period of time, there's often been scandals and graft and corruption.
Yes.
Again, I'm not suggesting this will necessarily take place, but history teaches us a good lesson that often that gets spent real fast without controls, and then we end up with having these investigations and special committees set up instead of right out of the gate making sure that the money that's appropriated and or by regulation is spent in the appropriate manner. Am I right about that?
Yeah, absolutely. The procurement process by which, the manner by which monies are spent via contracts. As you know, it has to be, there has to be transparency. There has to be a sufficient number of bidders.
Right.
The awarding of the bids has to be done appropriately. A good example is the Weatherization Assistance Program.
Right.
Pennsylvania normally gets about $40 million a year from the federal government for that program. That program is to put more efficient boilers, heaters in homes, better insulate homes, replace windows so that they're more fuel efficient. A good program. That program is going from a $40 million a year program to a $200 million a year program.
Wow.
There are hundreds of contracts involved in at the local level for entities to do that, generally nonprofit entities or local contractors. We have found problems in auditing that program in the past.
How many people on your staff?
We have 700 auditors, but it's not our job specifically to monitor. It's our job to come in after the dollars are spent.
Yeah, that's right.
So in this case, DCED, Department of Community and Economic Development, oversees the Weatherization Assistance Program.
And it could, we're not saying it will, it could overwhelm them. Is that your point?
Could overwhelm them. They need good internal monitoring of that program, more so than ever because of the excess money coming into the program.
Okay, we're chatting with the Auditor General of the state. We'll take a break. We'll come back for our final segment with him, and then credit card crunch. We had a submortgage prime problem. Are we heading for a huge credit card crunch problem? We'll chat later about that. See you in a moment.
Bye.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back, General Wagner. Before I let you go, I want to ask you one other question, and then, hopefully you'll come back. You're doing some stuff with the liquor control. I want you to come back in a couple of weeks if you're free, and we'll chat about it. But one question. If you were to write, what other areas of state government do you think you ought to have more expanded power? You don't do much with the legislature and these independent. Should there be some kind of auditing and oversight of what they do as well, other than themselves?
There has been discussion for a long time about the Auditor General having the power to audit the General Assembly. And I have said we are ready, willing, and able if the law is changed and or the Constitution. As you know, it's a different branch of government. Plus, there was a law passed in 1970 saying we could not audit the General Assembly. We are more than happy to do that if the power is given to us.
Look, I want to thank you. Good luck in your career. I have a feeling we'll be hearing from you on another matter. I keep bringing it up. The governor, we'll see if he runs. All right, it's a huge issue. Subprime mortgage goes to credit card problems. We're going to get into that in a moment after we pay some bills.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Penn Future, where we believe that every environmental victory grows the economy, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania.
Hey, welcome back to the program. This is a segment you don't want to miss, Credit Card Crunch, what's going on in the credit card market. This is big. Greg Smith, he's the CEO of the Pennsylvania State Credit Union, is in the house, along with Rick Wargo. He's the general counsel for the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. All right, I want to start with you, Greg. Consumer behavior in a recession is critical. Talk about why it matters and what's going on with credit cards and why people should care about this.
Well, we've actually seen pretty reasonable consumer behavior in terms of our members' spending patterns with their credit cards and things. But there are some things going on in the credit card industry. There are some new rules that go into effect in July 2010 that were passed last year by the Federal Reserve that are causing some of the major card companies to make some changes in their cards kind of proactively or preemptive strikes. What we're seeing is that credit card rates are being raised in the industry by the majors.
So interest rates are going up.
Interest rates are going up. Credit limits are being reduced in many cases, especially if a card holder isn't actively using that card. Card companies are trimming back their exposure on those credit limits.
And so, what's your advice then? I mean, we've been hearing a good bit about this, and plus this debate in Congress, which is complicated. Whether we get there or not is another matter. Should people be really paying careful attention to their statements and credit card changes? Go ahead.
Right. Card companies are obligated to send a change in terms notice anytime that they make a change to the contract. The current legislation only requires them to give 15 days notice. The new legislation or new rules would actually require a little bit longer change. But it's absolutely critical, and Terry, I think a lot of consumers don't pay attention.
I mean, I was going to say, Rick. I mean, look, I get them. I look at it, okay, but I mean, what's your advice to people when they get these? I mean, sometimes I don't even know I'm getting a solicitation for a credit card. I don't even know the difference between that and a bill. But go ahead.
Sure. Read what is in the mail. I like to use the analogy, a credit card is a tool, like a hammer, a screwdriver, a wrench. You need to use it wisely. If you use a hammer unwisely, you're going to break your thumb. If you use a credit card unwisely, you're going to be in a mountain of debt. Read those disclosures. You see the solicitation, and it's get the frequent flyer miles or get rewards points. That's nice. Take advantage of those if you can, but understand what you are paying for underneath those reward points.
And so what we're seeing now is all this attention. I mean, there are other shows, obviously, in cable and on the networks dealing with this subject, but it's clear that these changes are working their way through the credit card industry and ultimately will have some effect on consumer behavior if all of a sudden you have an interest rate. Can interest rates go to 15 or 20% if you miss
easily.
a payment or
Some of the card notices that we're seeing are closer to 30, actually.
Is that outrageous, or am I
No, I think it is.
Am I being dumb?
I want to make clear that the credit unions don't usually have rates like that. In fact, I think we'd be capped at an 18%. But the credit union I work for, our credit card has been at 9% for I don't know how many years now.
Our industry average is somewhere between 9 and 11% APR on purchase transactions.
Terry, these regulations are actually going to cost the industry, by some estimates, about $10.5 billion a year. And the 5 major card companies control about 90% of the cards in this country. And so what you're seeing already is rate increases. Bank of America several weeks ago raised its cash advance or balance transfer fee from 3% to 4%. Doesn't
Is
sound
this
like
to pay for the regulations? Is this why they're
I
doing
believe
it?
it is. I believe.
So in other words, let
banks
me get
don't-
this straight. The regulations are going to cost the credit card companies, what did you say?
$10.5 billion is the estimate I've
$10.5
read.
billion. So in order to recoup that, they're doing these adjustments to interest rates in order to. I mean, is that a fair?
I have a sense that banks don't like to give up money that they've grown accustomed to receiving.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to another aspect of this, and I think this is pretty important. We have this subprime mortgage crisis that allegedly, supposedly, was at the core of the problem with our economy. Now we have the situation where we're looking at what some think is massive credit card debt that will continue to roil the economy in a debate where people won't be able to help spend the way out of the economy because they're trying to pay off this huge credit card. Is that a fair assessment about what's going on?
Well, I think it's a very fair assessment. You look at economic conditions. Clearly, the conditions are ripe for all types of financial institutions to tighten as the consumer spending slows down. That, coupled with contraction in credit, just leads us to believe that we maybe economic-wise aren't at bottom, and there are interesting times ahead for everyone in the financial services.
Yeah. Now, look, the president, I think, is right. He's asked people to spend. You know, we're not going to get out of this. People do have to spend, and there should be some reasonable relationship between spending on the one hand and saving.
Agreed.
Am I right?
Agreed. Yeah.
Now,
and I don't think consumers, with all the concern about unemployment and things like that, people aren't going to spend as though they don't have any cares or concerns. So I think it's very.
But high credit card interest rates are not going to make a consumer feel more comfortable about going out and even buying something they need. I mean, it seems like common sense to me.
My advice to consumers would be to look for credit cards that are actually good values and have lower rates. Credit unions offer great rates on that.
We have about 30 seconds left, but people don't often do a lot of shopping, right? I mean, they just don't shop around. They just take.
Unfortunately, the tendency is to grab the first solicitation, but comparison shop.
Yeah. Look, this has been very helpful. Let's make it clear now what you're supposed to do. Check the mail, read the credit card statements, look for the interest rates, make sure you know what you're doing, and as always, stay well, and we'll see you next week for another edition of the show.